Start it up again, Robert.
Yeah. All right, cool. So yeah, I'm Pugh, Robert Pugh. I go by the ID of Pugh. I'm a former StarCraft 2 commentator who I guess had some rough patch in my personal life, which we've spoke about briefly. We could go into that. Then I came back to esports and I won a championship in Rocket League with Method Gaming, which they've like blown up recently. And now I'm a coach in training with Dr. K and Healthy Gamer, which is like really like I think the most exciting part of my life at the moment.
And that's super cool. If you look directly over my head, actually, that's my candle for the meditation Dr. K has me doing. So we
Yeah.
have that in common. I'm not too good yet at staying consistent with it, but I'm a huge fan of what he's done. He's a wonderful guy. And for those of you, well, you can talk more about what Dr. K is doing. It certainly shouldn't be me talking all about it. So for me, I'm Ethan Evans, and for my chat, we actually put in a new bio command. So either exclamation bio or exclamation Ethan for anytime anybody asks who I am or who's this old guy talking. Those of you who are here with me all the time can fill in the blanks. And so that's great. But I'm vice president of Twitch Prime at Amazon. I've worked at Amazon about 15 years, done a bunch of different things. I have a 25-year leadership and executive career. I worked within Twitch for several years, where I built mostly the developer-facing interfaces as well as the commonly and well-known sub-tiers, bits, sub-gifting, and community gifting are the things I'm probably best known for besides Twitch Prime. And with that, I always mention that though I'm do work at Amazon, I don't represent Amazon or Twitch when I speak here. So I'm happy to talk to you. And do you like to be called Robert or like to be called Pugh?
Which either I like if like go
Pewee?
with probably yeah Pewee because everyone
Pewee.
calls me Pewee.
All right.
Most
Well,
as long as you're not calling me Pug or Puggy, so that's
yeah,
good.
I will say I'm going to pat myself on the back here a little bit. I took a look at his name and actually guessed the right pronunciation, but I confirmed that
Yes,
with him before we rolled it out. And I can imagine being known as Puggy, if that's not your real name, is kind of annoying.
yeah, you get used to it, but yeah, after like so many years, it still
Well,
happens.
I answer not only to Ethan, but because I'm Ethan Evans, to Evan, Ian, and Nathan. All of
Okay.
which, when I was a kid, were obscure names, and so they all meant me. Now it's not such a sure thing. There are more Ethans and more of all of the others, but that's what I answered to. So for my audience, I'm not going to be too much in chat tonight, at least for a while. The basic idea is Robert has an extensive list of questions planned for me, and it's a chance for you all to learn a lot more about me, to see his view of my leadership style, and to learn either about me or from that. Because Pewee asked me basically if I could share my background to help him with some of the things he's trying to grow in.
Mm-hmm.
And maybe you want to say a little bit more about why you were interested in having me as a guest.
Yeah, absolutely. So you're in terms of like executive quality individuals on Twitch, there's like not many. It's pretty much like only you or like say Devin Nash. There's a couple other one like Hardek or Hendrik, I think his name is. But you're like part of Twitch, which is what we're streaming on. So it's like it's double like involved. And obviously there's a
Nice.
lot of technically there's things that you've created that I benefited from, right? So like gifted subs and bits and Twitch Prime. As a Twitch partner, I've been partnered like 6 years now. So it's really cool. And then I know that you've been on Dr. K's stream and you like worked on meditating and stuff like that. So there's that aspect. But I have a hard time maybe being professional and working with one of the biggest companies in the world. Like you must be very, very professional. And even watching your
Can't you tell from the shirt? That right there.
yeah,
That's no, the shirt's my trademark. So
yeah. And you have some really good content on YouTube as well. So I can't go through all of it because some of them are like 2 hour VODs, but there's a lot of smaller segments.
yeah.
And some of it I feel like I already like have a tendency towards, but I lack maybe a little bit of professionalism. And I don't know if that's sometimes I always thought that was a good thing because I'm very transparent, and I think like being transparent is quite important.
Hmm.
But I know that there's a line between being transparent and being professional, you know.
Sure. Yeah.
So I can imagine
That's
you, yeah,
yes, because transparently you could think someone is a complete idiot, but that isn't always the most professional thing to say to them. You're a
yeah.
complete idiot. Yeah.
Absolutely. So I think like that's something that I could work to improve on, and I noticed that you also coach other people,
Uh-huh.
and like it's just like you're a definite worthwhile individual to talk with about these things because you have a lot of experience as well.
Well, thank you. I hope to share some of that here tonight. So I posted in my Discord, by the way, in the general chat, a link to all the questions Pugh hopes to get to. I don't think it will be possible for him to get through maybe all of those, but we do have about 2 hours, which is a lot of time. So we can cover a
Yes.
lot of things. And I have something you may know if you've watched my show. I have a cocktail of the day. I have a big one today so that I can
Okay.
stay with you. And that's strawberry lemonade martini, I think. 40 PD, who's part of our mixology crew, can give the recipe in chat. Meanwhile,
Nice.
let's start off. Where would you like to begin?
Uh well, there is the list of questions. I like
And you can go through them in order. You know,
yep.
I'll let you, or not. You take it any way you want. I'm fine with whatever.
Yeah. I I think I've tried to structure them quite well. I think that's also something you have compared to me. I'm not as structured, and I didn't go to education as much. I had a hard time with education because I'm dyslexic, but you're quite a structured individual. But one of them was gonna be
That's like a
uh
really nice way of saying anal. I got it. It's
uh
okay.
yeah. Well, I'm quite anal, but I don't have that like the structure, like the professional structure. But one of them was gonna be like the first one is about an as a when you were growing up or when you went to education, did you see yourself become an executive, or was this somewhere you just ended up being, or it's like, what did you want to be when you were a kid? How did,
Yeah, great question. So first, as a kid, I wanted to be a paleontologist because I read a lot of dinosaur books, and I thought like digging up dinosaur bones would be really cool. And my dad crushed my dreams and said,
okay.
son, there's no money in that at all." Um, you know, because anyway, so he was very against that, and at quite a young age, my hopes were dashed. Um, but I was a teenager when computers first became available in the home, and that was like magic for me. Of course, I played games, um, and but I also taught myself to program, and so I was off to the races. And I actually wrote Apple Computer a I wrote Apple Computer a letter, and I said, "I have an Apple. I love Apple. How can I come work for you?"
Mhm.
And some guy actually wrote me back. I still have the letter stored away. It's like old longhand, letter. And he basically said, "Well, you can go, you need a degree in computer engineering," which I had never heard of, from one of 5 schools. They said, "We hire from Stanford, Berkeley, Caltech, Carnegie Mellon, and MIT." And 3 of those schools are in California. I live a long way from California. Uh, so without dragging the explanation out, I applied to the other 2 and only got into one. And boom, there I was at Carnegie Mellon. So I came out of that, got into work. I thought I wanted to be an engineer. And I got into work, and I learned that human puzzles were incredibly interesting, and I was pretty good at them. I also was a bit of an arrogant cuss, and I was very happy to tell other people what to do. And it turned out that that was desirable in my workplace. And so I ended up in management. And it wasn't an auspicious start to management in that sense, right? Like, I'm being tongue in cheek, but I was not a great manager 25 years ago. So,
Yeah.
but it was fascinating to me, and I took on learning and growing. So that's my answer. I did not plan on being an executive. I backed into it very much.
It's cool. And what was the like your favorite thing about like what drew you to that? Like, because one of the lists is like back then, was that considered like a very lucrative job to like like financially like really secure, or you just got
Um,
shoehorned into it?
Being in computer engineering, computer science was already very financially secure. And so I don't think it was a step up there. It was seen as probably higher pay, but it wasn't, I didn't feel like I was more secure. What drew me to it was the chance to uh, influence more decisions and I really found I liked getting things done, seeing them accomplished, and I could get
Hmm.
a lot more done with a team than I could alone. And so that's really what got me into it was orchestrating projects and seeing them ship was for me very, very fulfilling. And it turns out I'm really, you said I'm extremely structured. I'm really good at organizing projects so they get out the door.
Hmm.
That's probably my strongest talent. And people kept being willing to pay me more and give me bigger teams to do that. So that's how I ended up doing that.
That's cool.
Thank you.
That's Yeah, because I think like I've it seems like your leadership skills, as you said, like you weren't that good of a leader like 25 years ago, but you've developed it over the time, and that is
Mm-hmm.
slightly one question: is like how did it develop over time? Because back then, were you just like barking orders at people, or would you
In a
like
British accent, that sounds even worse than
yeah?
in American English. Um,
So-
but no, that's fair. That's what I was doing. I was pretty much barking orders at people. Uh, and that's how I got selected. In other words, there was a very nice man in the role before me,
Mhm.
a wonderful gentleman who's a friend of mine, and his team. We've been hosted by Healthy Gamer. So
Nice.
your sponsor is here. I expect our crowd may increase, but Dr. K and company, thank you for hosting us. That's wonderful. Since we're both your disciples,
Yes.
so I have the candle right up here, your golden candle that I don't use as much as I should, but it's here. The guy before me was so nice, he was moved aside for being too nice to be effective. Like that's
Okay.
literally how he got ditched. And he's a good friend of mine, but I often say I got a Klingon promotion, like over his dead body. And I didn't stab him, but, I
Mm.
was next man up when he was eliminated. And he wasn't fired, he was just moved aside. But they actually wanted someone abrasive, and I fit the bill, which, again, is not very flattering. But we were in a situation with a partnership that wasn't working out, and they wanted someone who would relentlessly dog the other partner. And that turned out like they selected for that trait. So again, I had to learn to be nicer, right? I had to learn to be a better person. And I've definitely talked about some of this on my channel, so I won't go on at length. But
Hmm.
basically, once you've alienated a few people and had them more or less quit saying you're kind of an a-hole, you, if you're a good person, you reflect on that and say, okay, how could I change? So,
Yeah, absolutely. When did you come to that like realization? Was it like a few years later, or?
um, yeah, I would say it was a few years later. I decided to change my leadership style. I mean, it's all okay. Your leadership style is always evolving and you're learning,
Mm.
but there are some things that drive a step function. And I had an employee, I've told this story in other contexts before, that I did a brilliant performance review of him, meaning it was very insightful, it was accurate. Um, but he was older than me because I was quite young, and he didn't really want to hear the feedback. And so having this younger sort of new manager come in and tell him all his flaws and what he could do about them was totally alienating because it just seemed like, who's this young wise ass? And
Yeah.
so he hated me from that point on, and he did a lot to undermine me. And he eventually got me in trouble with my management. Um, and that was kind of when I was like, oh, maybe just being like the smarter person or a smart person isn't actually how you lead. Like just leading by So I started to think at that point, what can I do differently? How can I be a better leader? And then it evolved from there, step after step for decades.
Yeah. But that's not that nice of him. I guess like it was a good learning experience for you, or like a blessing in disguise. But that's kind of like a kind of a petty thing of him, isn't it? Or like back then, I'm sure he
I
learned
don't.
it well.
Well, he certainly. Yeah, he wasn't. comfortable or mature enough to express his issues. To be fair, I probably wasn't mature enough to receive them well, or very perceptive. So it's a little bit. I had flaws, he had flaws,
Hmm.
and those mixed together were oil and water. But as a leader, you can't expect your employees, unfortunately, to always be super good at communicating. Like, it falls on you to get good at reading them, and
Yeah.
it engendering the trust where they feel safe being transparent. And I obviously made him feel very unsafe. I made him feel, again, I think he was probably 15 years older than I was, and I was about 25. He may have only been 35. But it had to be very painful to have sort of this fresh out of college kid telling him what he could improve. Like, in hindsight, it was just like horrible, horrible leadership on my part. And somebody in my chat says, how did that conflict resolve? Essentially, he undermined me with a manager who was a friend of his. I tried to transfer to a new role to do something else, and that manager stopped it, reassigned me under somebody else, and eventually I left the company. So it didn't go great. I didn't
Oh.
get fired, but I would say if there's a political conflict there, he won. Because, I ended up not where I wanted to be, and then eventually chose to move on, and he didn't. So,
Yeah.
yeah. So,
Yeah. Probably like long term, it benefited you, and probably like I don't know what company that was, but they lost out. So like sucks to be them, I would say.
yeah,
Um,
long term, I ended up better off and at a way better company.
yeah, and with more success as well. So or like more achievements. So that's pretty cool. Well, I was gonna say like, what's the hardest thing that you had to face while being an executive? But was that it? Or
No,
no? No, that's not.
no, not even close. So one of the things I've had to do a couple times is I've worked at startups that were struggling financially. And one of the hardest things I've had to do is go sit with my team and tell them, hey, we're out of money as of today or as of tomorrow. Our bankers tell us they're going to give us more money, but I need to be honest with you. If you come into work tomorrow, which I'd like you to do, you're working on faith, and we can't guarantee we'll pay you. But I still want you to come back and trust in that. And I need you to just like work on faith for a week or two, and probably your checks won't bounce. And that's a really hard thing to sell someone,
Yeah.
Now, luckily, because we were super transparent, I actually had pretty good luck. And
Yes.
one of the few employees I lost immediately anyway was when I had to do that at one company for the second time in the course of a couple months. The receptionist was part of my team because I ran human resources. And she said, I like you guys, but this is too much stress for $9 an hour. I can go make $9 an hour without all the stress. So see ya. And I thought that was actually like super reasonable, right? Like
Yeah.
it wasn't like she had stock options or,
As a receptionist, yeah.
so that's one of the hardest things I've had to do. The other one I'd probably share that's really difficult is terminating someone over the phone. Like when you've reached a point where it's not going to work, but you can't even sit with the person and you're literally on the phone expressing that unfortunately, today's going to be their last day, and they're like not in agreement. Sometimes, by the way, you'd say like, well, who's ever in agreement? There are definitely some people who like understand it's not working out, and they're like, yeah, I get it. Well, this gentleman wasn't that either. And so, firing over the phone is just super tough. So those are a couple of like the hardest things I've ever done.
Yeah, I can. So you sound like quite because like one of the later questions is about like how executives and CEOs can be like quite sociopathic. I definitely don't have that sense from you, since like especially when you were at the startup and you had to tell people like, hey, like we have to wait for the investment. Were you also in the same boat? So
Of
you were
course,
still,
yeah, yeah.
so like,
Yeah. I was also at a company that did have to do significant layoffs. And in that company, I laid myself off. And so I could tell the employees, today I'm laying you off and I will be laid off tomorrow. But in order to be part of the company, in order to lay you off, I have to be here one extra day, but I will see you on the other side of the line tomorrow.
Mm.
And I put myself on the layoff list in conjunction with some of my other founders. I probably do have some sociopathic traits. There's a difference between having some ability, like that's a really loaded word.
Yes.
But some of the traits of being able to separate your feelings from your actions, because you don't get through telling 50 people that they don't have jobs. And in that case, I was telling them like, no, you don't have jobs. I don't have a job. Sorry. But you have to be able to separate your feelings.
Yeah.
And it's tough. It's another thing that's classically hard just to share in that same vein is when someone is very, very emotional. So you're trying to give a performance message, whether it's termination or you need to improve or whatever, and they're crying or screaming. And, you can't let that. You're getting all this emotion pushed at you, and you can't break professionality.
Yeah.
You can be sympathetic, you can be empathetic, you can be firm, but you can't be like, well, F you, get the hell out of here, or, suck it up, buttercup. Like you can't do these things. Yeah. So those are tough. You do need to be able to separate your emotions from the situation, or at least not respond to your emotions.
That makes sense. Do you then, out of curiosity, once you finish those sessions or after like you've had to fire people, do you ever are you ever self-critical afterwards? Like, I could have done this better, I could have done that better, I could have cared more, or separated a bit better?
Yeah, I think you play that over in your head over and over again, because anytime you're in a situation where someone is losing a job, there's been a ton of mistakes made. Did you hire the wrong person? Did you coach them wrong? Did you put them in the wrong role? Did they have the wrong teammates? You play all this in your head because it's horrible. I've been, I tell my chat, I'm not shy about it, that I've been laid off twice, but when I was laid off both times, I was in a situation where I had made myself somewhat expendable in a bad way. So when you're in that situation, or when someone else is in that situation, something has gone wrong. And usually several things have gone wrong. Because if something's just a little bit wrong, you tolerate it or try and fix it. And one of the things I used to ask managers when I interviewed them is, do you find it easier to fire someone or to lay them off? More people say it's hard to lay them off, because if you're firing someone, it feels like you can explain that in terms that they can take responsibility for. Like, unfortunately, you're in an artist position and you're not very good at drawing, so we can't continue to employ you, is skill-based, and the person can act on that, versus, hey, we misled the business. We're not succeeding as a business, but I'm keeping my job and you're not. Sorry. Like, that's a much lamer... That's much harder to do and feel at all good about yourself, or good for them even.
I understand that, because there's no way to take that and be productive with it, to self-improve. So
yeah, exactly. All they can do is well, I should get better at which companies I choose, right?
Yeah, and that's
yeah.
I can appreciate that. I was going to say I didn't really know the difference between being laid off or being fired, but now it makes sense.
Yeah, laid off is not performance related. It's business circumstances. In the U.S., it's often called RIF, reduction in force, or job elimination. Fired is performance of some kind. Like, you're being terminated because you're not doing the job to the standards of the job.
That's fair. Interesting. So one other question I did have was, how do you select now, or you could talk about this over the course of your career, how do you select who's best suited to accomplish goals under you?
Uh, so somewhere in your list, I think there's like, what's the one thing of wisdom you've learned? This would not be it, but it is
Okay.
pithy, which is if you want something done, give it to a busy person. And what that means is busy people are busy because they get stuff done. And
Hmm.
it turns out, you'd think like, no, that's insane. Give it to the person who has time. But often the reason the person has time is they're not very good at getting things done. Um, but what you're trying to do in a perfect world, you're matching. Yeah, and one of my chat probably, I don't know where you're from, the real uh, Geekika. I don't know how you say your name, but it says laid off equals redundancy.
Redundancy. Yeah,
Yeah, yeah,
that's what we'd call it in the UK. Yeah.
yeah. So I've been made redundant a few times. I've never been fired. Um, oh, got it. Okay. Answering your question though, um, in an ideal world, you match the job to someone's skills and motivation. So it's something they can do and that they want to do. And if you're really nailing it, it's something that's like a stretch for them. Like, yes, they can do it, but it's not easy. It's going to challenge them. It's
Hmm.
going to make them learn. Like in perfect world, that's what you do. Of course, at the end of like matching up perfect tasks to perfect people, you're left with a bunch of tasks that either people don't want to do or that they're not really quite qualified to do. And now you have to like do the rest of the jigsaw puzzle, but the pieces don't fit together quite right. And you're kind of pounding them into place or asking people like, I know this work kind of sucks, but you take your turn doing the suck work and we'll move it around. Because,
Hmm.
jobs unfortunately contain some work that's really fun and engaging and some that's kind of shoveling poop. And
Yes.
you've got to have somebody shovel the poop because that's, if you're in the horse business, like not everybody gets to be the jockey. Some people shovel the poop. So,
Yeah, that makes sense. Like, I mean, like, there's a term in the UK. I used to work in retail. It was like, like his poop sinks to the lowest level.
yeah,
So, like,
we call it
you
shit
got,
rolls downhill. Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
like, yeah, that's a better way to term it. Yeah, but definitely so. And it's like, I guess, passed along. And you got, like, you have to have that aspect. You have to be able to do that. And sometimes that's a good and bad thing. It's like, it keeps you on your toes. But I definitely agree. Like, I like what you said about give it to someone who's busy, because someone who's busy is someone who's proactive with what they do in life. And I like, because there's the opposite saying. It's like lazy people find the quickest way to do it or something like that, like the shortcuts. And I don't always believe in that, but it's like somewhat true in a sense. Like people will find like the laziest way to do things, but that doesn't mean it's always done to the highest quality. So that's pretty cool. Out of curiosity, then, within your job now, like what you love about it?
Oh. Um, well, there's what I love personally, and there's what I love as a team or an organization. I love solving really hard problems. And actually, the more I've both taught here on Twitch, because I coach people on Twitch, and the more I work, I like just working on really hard intellectual problems. I skipped
Okay.
over in my career for a bit. I thought I was going to become a professor. So at one point, I was working on a PhD and I wanted to research
Oh,
and teach. And I just didn't have the patience for it. Like, PhD in my case was going to take 6, 7, 8 years, like very long. And I just am a little too impatient for that. Um, but for me, it's solving hard problems. And a lot of that then has to do with like solving hard problems with my team. And so whether it's personnel or people are struggling with a skill, what I love about my job is that feeling of, oh, I did this. I figured something out.
mm,
And I would say there's a lot of analogies, surprisingly, between work and gaming. It's the feeling of the clever technique, the good game, the win. It's the same pop of endorphins for when because you played StarCraft, right?
yes.
And it's that same pop of endorphins where you're able to totally surprise someone with what you've done, and you're like, oh, nailed it.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's that same feeling, um, and so that's what I love most, and I just for better or for worse, when my current team's about 200 people,
Oof.
we're always facing new problems. And so I don't know. I know that you guys have problems with COVID-19 in the United Kingdom as well. We've all been sent home from work, and my team was an almost entirely in-office team. So like today's new problem or this week's new problem is, how do you take 200 people who work together in the office and figure out all the things to get them to be effective at home?
Yeah.
And that, and it's just problem after problem after problem. Some of them are simple, like we don't have a great whiteboarding tool so that people can whiteboard together. And then some of them, bizarrely, are employees who are working too hard. And I say this because it will surprise chat a little bit. We have people that are finding it really hard because they sit at their computer and then they have dinner and they just keep working. And now they're working because they don't have that, oh, I went home, I get to be home now. They're just working all day and they're starting to like burn out. And so short term, it seems awesome. Like you'd think like, this is great. I put on my sociopath hat that you talked about. I'm the boss. People are working 12 hours a day. Like, sweet. But if they burn out, I'm losing. And so actually, trying to help people say like, it's okay to put in a regular day and then close your laptop and not answer emails. It's okay.
Yeah, which is a big thing that Twitch streamers can have, because they like, if they stream a lot and they work from home, they're always in the same space, and you got to take off your work hat and put on your chill out, relax, focus on you, self-love. That's why they say going out and having a nice walk, especially in like nature, is like really good to help detach yourself from those types of things.
Yeah, that's definitely a challenge for a lot of partners. There's always going to be a partner who streams more than you. And the same thing is true in a big workplace. There's always going to be that one person who is working harder than you. And if you get into competing with that, then you become that person. And that's a trade-off I wouldn't make. I work hard, but not that hard. So
yeah, that definitely makes sense, because I've worked in jobs where the managers, I asked them, how did you become a manager? Because sometimes people they want to become manager really quickly, and it's I showed up, I was the first one to leave, I was the last one. I was the first one here in the morning, and then I was the last one to leave, and it's hard to get that balance. So yeah, I can definitely appreciate that. And it's something I work from home, so technically I have to manage that. So I like to go out to the gym and stuff like that, and that helps me find my balance.
And somebody on my side's asking, by the way, how many hours a week do I work on average? Throughout my career, I've worked basically between 50 and 60 hours. But I want to say on the 60, when I was doing that, I'm not counting just hours that I was present. That's 60 hours of real work. So I work pretty hard. But no, I don't work 70, 80 hours, and I haven't. It turns out I just can't take it. In college, I did that some. But if you're actually working 70, 80 hours a week, that's an I'm not talking about just being at your desk or in the office chatting with people. Really working 70 hours a week is exhausting, draining, and I can do it for a week, but no more. So I don't. But 25 years of 55 hours, I feel pretty good about it. That's a solid investment.
Talking about how often you work, I would say 55 hours is a bit more on the extreme end. It's not as wild as it gets, because as you said, 70, 80 hours is something that people can do. Do you think that 55 hours is kind of the cap? Because it seems like you're very self-aware. So if you're you can go home and that's when you stop working. But it seems like you still think about what would happen throughout the day. Is that a part of something that played into it, because you're very cerebral with?
I don't count. I don't count the thinking time as work. Maybe I should, but I just enjoy puzzling on things so much that's work equals recreation. I often am engaging my wife, who also was an executive earlier in her career, like, hey, I had this situation at work and blah, blah, blah happened. And what do you think I should do? But for me, that's just conversation
Yeah.
usually. But yeah, if you count that, it's like extra work. But I just burn out, sustaining much more than that. And what I find is it's not I'm not willing to sit at my desk more, but I just find myself screwing around. Like I mean to work and then I'm on Facebook, or I mean to work and then I'm on Twitch. And then I've sunk an hour and I haven't done anything. And so you just got to know, like, okay, if I'm, busy checking my email and checking the news and checking the stock market, I'm not working. So why not just admit I'm not working? And I think, a lot of people, even some here in chat, are talking about working 70 hours. I would just ask, like, how much are you really working?
Mhm.
Because 50, 55 hours of real work, or 60 hours, that's a lot of work. Like,
Yeah.
you should get a hell of a lot done. So,
Or get paid really, really well for it. Yeah.
yeah.
Because that's the point where it's like you're not gonna have any or like a huge amount of time for like actual hobbies. Like fair enough, you can be married and do that, but if you're commuting and making your own food and stuff like that, not eating out or anything like that, it's gonna suck a lot into like your own personal life, and it's like that's what you do then.
Yeah. So, something I can share, I learned almost 10 years ago. I had read about this guy, and I think he was older, but somehow he figured out that, well, anyway, the point is, he took 3 jars, and he had a jar of white marbles and a jar of black marbles and an empty jar in the middle. And every week he felt he spent well, he put a white marble in the jar. And every week he felt he like wasted or put in ways he didn't, he put a black marble in. I started doing this 10 years ago with weekends. I figured the week is the week, you work hard. But like if I'm working all weekend, I'm going to put a black marble in because that's not really living.
Yeah.
And the discipline this caused is when I saw myself putting at one point in my career like black marble after black marble after black marble, the ritual of every Sunday night saying, okay, did I live my life in a way that like had anything in it for me? About 3 marbles in one February, 3 black marbles in, I'm like, okay, this is effed. Like I got to do something different. And so you need some way to drive a change, make a change. And I guess Steve Jobs said this as well. Like if you're spending days doing things you hate, make a change. So
Yeah, and I think that's like really important to note because it's like it starts to become your being, and you don't want to be like you become what's the word, like a bit jaded as a result of that,
burnt
like
out. Also,
burnt out. Yeah,
people talk about burnt out.
and
Yeah, you can. So I don't recommend that, right? And someone in my chat here said about, is there a work smarter, not harder? There is to some degree. Most of the work we do, if you look back on it a week later, 2 weeks later, like, did that really make a difference? Maybe you have to wait 6 months. A lot of the stuff we do turned out not to be that useful.
mm-hmm.
And so if you can figure out the right work to do, you actually don't have to work as hard.
Yes.
So that's about being disciplined and saying, even though, do you have time for a little bit of a discourse on this?
Yeah.
Okay. So
Yeah.
basically, if you work all week, you're going to get a bunch of stuff done. And if you're a normal person, you're working on stuff you like and that's easy for you. And what that means is eventually by the end of the week, what's left is stuff that's like hard and you don't like. But that might be what really needs to be done. And what a lot of people do is they're like, oh, I don't want to do that. And they hunt around for something else. And then they look at it again. They're like, oh, I still don't want to do it. If you have the discipline to suck it up, if that's the most important thing to do, suck it up and do it. You may not need to do a bunch else. And I think a lot of people end up putting in a lot of hours rather than doing the thing that really needs to be done. They just dance around it and find ways to delay. And so I talk a lot here. Someone typed out the swallow that frog adage, right? It's the thing is, if you need to eat a frog, there's no point in putting it off. Just start chewing.
Yeah.
No one really wants to eat a frog. at least a whole live frog, right? And so like, but yeah, all right,
It, I mean, that can revolve around a lot in like something I've noticed anyways, and like even Dr. K would talk about it, is like discipline and life as a whole. So I like the quote, because there is a section of quotes, but like I like philosophy a lot, so I like quotes. But it's like
sweet,
what yeah, what you need most in life will be where you least want to look for it. So it's like if you got to go eat a frog and you don't want to eat a frog, you've like the best way to learn to eat a frog is to eat a frog, you know. And it's like,
yeah, 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 yeah.
and you would condition yourself and discipline yourself to get better at doing it the more you do it, but you're like, it's ultimately the fact that you have to do it. And I think like, you know, like that can result in like, or you could compare that to real life stuff like losing weight, you know, like going to the gym. Or for me, like I have to gain weight, so like I'm eating loads of food, and like I have to learn to cook, so I'm cooking more, and I might not enjoy the food as much, but you know, it's something that everyone kind of thinks that like they just want to, like everyone's so desensitized to like doing stuff that's easy because of gaming and distractions, or the internet, which is good at distractions. Everyone thinks that like everything that you do is going to be easy, and it's like it's not. You have to like the more you do a hard thing, the easier it becomes as well.
Yeah, so we should talk about that for a minute because I work with game designers. I'm not a game designer, but I'm part of Amazon Game Studios as a group,
Okay.
and I know the game designers. Remember, games are specifically designed to like keep you playing, right?
Mm-hmm.
Games are designed to like feed you a little bit of success and keep you right on that edge of like, oh, here's a little more, here's a little more,
Yeah.
want another cookie? And so they're literally adaptive to tune to like what you can tolerate, and that's why you can set the difficulty. And you're like, oh, I don't want to do hard work today, slash I don't want to like, here's a really casual game and I can slide it down and I can put in the cheat code so I have unlimited ammo because I want to
Yeah.
feel great about myself. And then when you want something a little tougher, you can like slide it up a little. But if you think of all the multiplayer games, they match you in servers to people who play like you because it's no fun getting crushed. And it
Yeah.
turns out also, while it's fun for a little while to waste complete noobs, that actually isn't any fun either. Like after a little while, you're like, okay, I've won like a bunch of matches by just wiping the board. This isn't actually very engaging. And so the point though here is that careers aren't like this. They're not auto-tuned to how you're feeling. And your work doesn't get easier just because you don't feel up to it today. Um,
Yes.
and so you've got to manage to overcome that. And you've got to figure out how you're going to tackle when you really need more energy. Um, you know, uh, you're going to have to figure out how to deal with that because sometimes the difficulty on your life is going to be set to hard and you're going to have to cope. Luckily, sometimes it's set on easy, but not all the time. So,
That makes a lot of sense because yeah, some people like this is a question I have a little bit later on to an extent, but some people just want that easy job, and like they yeah, they want to make money most of the time, but like you don't get that correlation where it's like you got to work a bit harder to like get a bigger paycheck to an extent, or like challenge yourself. So that makes sense. And it's cool that you get to work with some of the game developers because that is like, you know, I've
oh, sure. Yeah.
yeah, because I've done that. Like, I'll like if I came from something like StarCraft 2, which is like a super high intense game. I don't know if you've ever played StarCraft, but it's quite difficult, like especially like at the higher ranks. And sometimes you can't be bothered for that. And then you get other games now, like say Rocket League, which I think is like it has quite a high skill ceiling, but Rocket League's like really chill, relaxing type of game. And you even get then the single player games which you can like just like chill out with.
Yeah.
So that's cool.
Yeah, for StarCraft, my background, I haven't played much. I went to a couple of BlizzCons, so I got to see
Okay.
the StarCraft championships, and obviously anything where like the best players are using heat pads and like working their fingers so that their fingers are as fast as possible, it tells you a little bit about the challenge, right? And so watching the world's best StarCraft players compete was certainly, it's and StarCraft's really the only esport in many ways that's one-on-one. Like almost all
Yes.
the other esports are team on team. StarCraft was very like absolutely one-on-one. So
Yeah, it's true lone wolf. Like that's something that you play it and it's just like it's brutal as hell because you're like you take it all out on yourself.
well, it is all you. right? There's no looking at, whatever, blaming the person who was in the top lane that they didn't hold the lane or push the lane. You're not going to get away with that. It's
Yeah.
like, I got beaten straight
Yeah.
up. He or she beat me. Um, so
Yeah, that's something, because that's something like, how long? Oh, you've been with them with the company for quite a while.
yeah.
But it's like because I'm always quite proud to be a StarCrafter, because there was Justin.tv, and then Twitch came out, and Twitch is known for specifically being created because one of the directors couldn't stop watching StarCraft 2. So it's nice to be a part of, like, that's a rich
StarCraft
part
2
of,
absolutely started Twitch. There's no
yeah.
question. Like they're very transparent about the genesis of Twitch. I love it, by the way. My chat is giving all the excuses you can still use as a StarCraft player. Lag, DDoS. They have a list that it's still not their fault. So they didn't
Yeah.
lose, they got hosed. So
Yeah.
that's pretty funny.
That's it. Oh no, or like blind counted you build, like that's a common one. Like,
Yeah.
or the, like, if you get cheesed and stuff like that, cheese you, like, you noob, you go for the cheese. You're not like a proper gamer who goes like, because back then it was like you have to play a macro game to be like a proper gamer. Like a macro game is when you go for like an expansion, and a cheese is when you just like you rush out a couple of units, or you proxy. If you're a Protoss, you proxy like the gateways. You just run in there with the zealots and just like destroy their units, like straight up. Or a Zerg would like six pool or
Yeah.
something like that. And oh god, that was like, I can remember really being angry at the game. And then I guess this is like forcing yourself to do the harder things. I forced myself to start saying GG after every game I lost, right? And that kind of forced me into the mentality of like, I lost fair and square. At the end of the day, like, I lost fair and square. I had the ability to do different types of builds, or I had the ability to be better and scout. And I should take that as a lesson to improve instead of just getting angry and attacking someone. Because if you attack someone for them being better, or you not being as good as you could have been, then you kind of fail to learn how you could improve. And I think that's like something that could apply to like life as a whole, and probably work as well. And
I agree with that. Like I actually admire that quite a bit. Like forcing yourself. It's so I stream a lot with this guy. I think you know him, Devin Nash. At least know of him. We're both big fans of this book, Extreme Ownership, and it's this is basically talking about taking ownership of the fact you got beaten. Like
yeah,
that book is very, very no excuses. And I think that's right. Like, don't make a bunch of excuses. Suck it up and admit, like, hey, I didn't get this done. I didn't do what I needed to, and therefore I lost. And that's actually a very powerful perspective, because once you can own it, you can do something about it. Whereas if you're blaming the lag, you may not change your play. And even worse, if you're in a team game and you start blaming other teammates, you're doubly hosed.
yeah, you're
And
toxic
so,
then. Yeah,
I think starting to own it and say, I just need to compliment this person and say, like, hey, you beat me, good game. And of course, in StarCraft, the way the game works, even the best player isn't going to win every game. I think that's more, some things like Hearthstone are even more that way. Like the way the cards come up, a bad player is going to beat a good player sometimes. But
yeah,
you got to own that. So cool. Good job.
yeah, absolutely. I think that, like, a bit off topic, but that also applies to like relationships as well. Because some people would be like, "Oh, it's their fault. This ended. They're toxic. They're abusive. Blah blah blah," and they think like they're the golden child. Like, and that's not how you improve. Like, in relationships, or like that's not how you you stop becoming toxic, right? Because that's just called that toxic. And I think that's something a lot of people get stuck in. And this is something that we talk in Healthy Gamer with. It's called Haram Kara in Vedic psychology, which is Sanskrit for like ego. So it's like a lot of people do that to like protect their ego, so
Totally.
they can't let they can't and I know you've also done videos on dealing with egos at work, where people like they just can't accept that they're wrong, and like that can
Because
be
it's
for them.
painful.
Yeah.
The specific thing is it's painful. It's just like it's painful to admit I got beaten. I
Yes.
played my best game and this other person took it to me. Or I didn't play my best game. Like I meant to play well, but I effed up and I missed something. I missed a build. I missed a unit. I missed, either of those is painful because you either have to realize, okay, I wasn't the best in this game. Maybe I'm not the best, period. Or I made a mistake. And it's so much easier to externalize that and blame. And look,
Yeah.
you talked about relationships. You do have to have barriers and not like let people convince you totally. The thing that's different is you have to be in a place where you can say, I lost. Jeepicus, thank you for hosting. You have to be in a place where you can say, I lost without also saying, I suck.
Yes.
Because one is about your value and one is about what happened. And so you can own the fact that it didn't work out and that was your responsibility. But if you let that roll over to, oh, and I'm a worm,
Yeah.
now you're in trouble.
Absolutely. Yeah. Like that's one thing I wanted to like we would touch upon about this is like you have to understand your self-worth and have like the self-love, because if not, and this is something I've had to overcome. So I would say like I was a bit of a pushover through most of my life, and I've had to like it's part of like being able to stand up for yourself, because sometimes people are going to blame you when it's not even your fault
Right.
either, and you have to acknowledge like or not get gaslit in a sense.
Yeah, I'm glad you used the term gaslit. You've got to be able to discriminate. See, the thing about learning to own what is your fault is it can make you better at learning to not own what isn't your fault. To say, no, I'm perfectly good at taking responsibility for where I did fall short. But in this case, I did the right thing. I was talking to somebody in my Discord yesterday or day before, and I said, look, the way to understand this, which you've quoted a bunch of different Buddhist thoughts, the way to understand this is you can, what is it? Let me see if I get this right. Oh, you can till the fields, you can plant the seeds, but you can't make it rain. Like you can do everything right as a farmer. If the weather's not there, like you simply don't control that. And so a dumb farmer might do everything wrong, but the rain comes at the wrong time of year when it's not predicted, and they still have a great crop. And you might do everything right and get nothing. Now, the odds should favor you over time, but like you've got to, and for those who don't know, gaslighting is basically where people undermine your belief in yourself. They try and destabilize your reality, and I don't know the exact definition, but essentially, they end up getting you to question yourself when it wasn't really you. So they're assigning blame to you for things that aren't actually you, and then you start thinking like, oh, maybe that was me. Maybe I didn't make it rain. Maybe if I had prayed harder, maybe if I had done the right rain dance. So
Yeah,
yeah,
absolutely. Being gaslit is like it's a hard thing. It happens a lot more in say like personal relationships, but I can imagine in a work experience, it's like, you do something your own way and someone does it their own way, and like they might fail and they like try to blame you, or like the company like just doesn't make as much money and it's like it's your fault when they might not be working as hard, and it's just like that's
yeah,
an
no. I
ego
think
thing.
gaslighting does happen at work, where people assign blame for things that aren't really, or criticism of things that aren't really real, but they're externalizing their own issues, right? They're like if I'm a boss and I make a bad decision, I say the simplest example is like, let's take a Twitch example everybody will know. I was one of the main people pushing for tiered subs, for the idea that we should have tier 1, 2, and 3 subs. And the idea worked, like they work. You can get a tier 2 and tier 3 sub, but they're not super popular, meaning not a lot of people do it. Now, the reason for that, in my opinion, is we didn't make them valuable enough. Like the reason to sub at $10 or $25 isn't strong enough. But I could go attack my subs team when I ran them and say, like, you guys, I had a good idea and you didn't implement it right. And like, it's all you. Like, this good idea you've turned into shit.
Yeah.
That would be gaslighting. And that does happen at work, because if I can't accept the fact that, like, no, my idea was okay, but it was actually not brilliant and it wasn't complete enough, that's on me.
Yes.
So, but if I can't accept that, you can always find some reason to like rain on somebody else's parade. So,
Absolutely. Yeah. That's a really good example of that. And like we won't go too into it, but
yeah.
yeah, I because there's probably a number of reasons to that. But
Yeah, there's lots of ways. Like, yeah, we shouldn't have the discussion of all the ways to fix tiered subs. But
yeah.
the point is, though, I pushed for them. We built them. It worked all right, but it wasn't a huge, like, you compare it to sub gifting, which was like, woo, super
Yeah.
great. And, it just wasn't as good. And so I can either blame the team or blame myself. I was the one pushing for it, so it kind of seems like it's me. But a lot of people can't own up to that. So,
Yeah.
so
No,
what else you got? Hit me. I love this interview stuff. It's like I didn't have to prep for this show. Like usually I'm doing all the prep you did.
Yeah.
So now I just get to like show up and talk about, my history.
Yeah, cool. Well, we can dive into a bit more of a loaded question.
All
So
right.
it seems like you didn't work like an extreme amount, but what did working as like an executive with a high stressful job, like what did you have to sacrifice? Did it cost you anything from your past? Do you regret anything about it?
Sure. Yeah. And, again, I want to emphasize I'm away from I 60 hours of work takes more than 60 hours of time, like
Yeah.
commuting and all that stuff. I'm not counting. So it's a lot of time. One of the things that cost me, my wife and I were just comparing notes. Since I moved away from my childhood home, I've never lived in the same place more than 4 years. Oh, Blaine86,
Okay.
hey, thank you for gifting to people in my chat. That's awesome. Really appreciate your support. Um, so yeah, let's see. I probably should kill the alert noises here real quick. So hang on. I don't
It's
want
all
those
good.
chirping away on us. Anyway, the point is, one thing it cost me was just living in the same place. Like I moved around a lot. I moved from Pittsburgh to Boston, back to Pittsburgh to DC to Boston to Seattle. And so you're leaving people behind, you're leaving family behind, you're leaving friends behind. I chose to go where the work was. And
Yeah.
that cost me relationships. It cost me time with my extended family. So that's one thing. That's one obvious cost. I think it cost me some time with my kids, right? Like, because kids, when they're young, they go to bed early. So if you work late, you're getting home when they're in bed. So that's probably the biggest cost is like time with my daughter. That I just, there's no perfect answer there. I can't give anybody a perfect answer. It's just all things are trade-offs. And unfortunately, the culture in the U.S. is a little more long hours than a lot of, not everywhere in the world. Supposedly, Japan, Korea, China might be more.
Yeah.
But the U.S. culture is pretty hardworking, and there's a lot of trade-offs. I haven't traveled as much as I'd like. We have a lot less vacation. I do use it all. I don't ever let vacation expire. But that a lot of people do. A lot of people in the U.S. do not take all their vacation, and we don't even get that much. So that tells you a lot, right? If people are getting only 2 weeks off, maybe 3 weeks off, and then they're not even taking it, it tells you a lot about the culture. So those are some different sacrifices. Of the things I regret, it's time with my daughter for sure.
Out of curiosity, how old is she?
She's now 17.
Okay.
So she's reached the years where she's not that interested in seeing dad, right? I mean, she's a great
Yeah.
kid, but she's not that, like she wants to do her thing, and I'm like, oh no, let's hang out, and she's like, yeah, whatever. Uh, you know, I understand that. I don't
Yeah.
have to love it.
Yeah. Would you say that you're like, because there's always ways that like you go through life and then you realize there's certain aspects and then you try to like compensate for it. So it's like now would you say like you're trying to work maybe a little bit less as you get a
Hmm.
bit older? You have like obviously the ease coach, or
Hmm.
are you just going to take like an early retirement because it's like you've like made enough bank where it's like you don't have to worry
Well,
hopefully too
that would
much
be
about
nice.
financials?
Gosh, I'd like to do that. No, I've definitely cut my work hours down, but that came with a cost too.
Mm-hmm.
About 5 years ago, I was working in a job that I wasn't enjoying as much in Amazon, and that's when Amazon bought
Oh,
Twitch. And I actually reached out to my then boss, different boss that I have now, and said, "Hey, I really want to go work at Twitch. Like, I will enjoy that more." And he was like, "Yeah, but we need you where you are." And that confrontation or that discussion had to get pretty deep before he would let me take the job at Twitch. And by taking the job at Twitch, I went from having a team at that point of 800 to none.
okay.
Because when I joined Twitch, I was an advisor to the Twitch CEO, Emmett Shear, but I didn't have any reports at all. So I went from, this pretty executive role of 800 people to being an advisor to the CEO. Now, eventually, Emmett ended up deciding that it was in his best interest to give me some teams at Twitch. And then I also started Twitch Prime. And so my organization grew to be 300 or 400. And then when I transitioned back to Amazon, where I am now, moving inside the company from Twitch to Amazon, Amazon to Twitch, now I have about 200. And it's not about the number of people, but the point is I stepped off the highest growth career trajectory. One of my peers, who when I left that 800-person job, he was in a smaller job, went on to the Amazon Alexa team. And the last time I knew, he had about 2,000 people working for him. And, I don't know, but was probably being paid more, and is viewed as more senior to me, even though he was not in the beginning. So long story short, I decided to do what was fun and to work less. And I definitely do. But there's a cost to that. I decide, again, Amazon actually is supportive of the idea that I stream. Because
Okay.
all the Amazon leaders, they can see me stream. It's not like it's secret. And they're
Yeah.
like, "Oh, that's kind of cool. You do that. Don't say anything you shouldn't." But otherwise, they're vaguely supportive, which is nice. That's actually nice.
Just gotta add that bit just in case they're watching that way.
No, no, no. Well, it's nice because I didn't really.
Yeah.
I asked my direct boss, but I wasn't sure how the rest of like Amazon PR and stuff would think about it. And they've come around and they're very supportive, so that's nice. The point though is, I made a decision to do what was fun to me, which is coach people and help them grow. And I'm super lucky in that in my chat, like I had someone here gift 5 subs, Blaine86, a few minutes ago. But yesterday, the gift came from someone else who said, "Hey, your advice helped me get into my dream graduate school." And I hear from somebody like that a couple times a week, like, "Your advice, your coaching helped me get this thing I really wanted, and my life is better." And so that's a better form of paycheck than one more level on the corporate ladder for me. So, um, so anyway.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. I like that's one reason why I like because there's a lot like I'm trying to get more into interviews and there's like a huge variety and I have like a lot of professional friends or gamer friends that I could probably interview. And someone was talking about how like they like to watch your stream and I was like, oh, I like to tune in and check out his stuff as well.
Nice.
Um and I was like, I'll just message you and interview you. Hopefully,
Yeah,
and
yeah.
like that's what led to that. Like if someone mentions it as well, it's like have you heard the term synchronicity,
Sure.
which is like serendipity, isn't it? So I
Yeah,
was like,
yeah.
I'm kind of like that because I'm quite like spiritual. So I was like, I'll message him, and thankfully you were kind enough to agree to do this. So
Sure.
it's cool. And I'm on the different side of the spectrum, right? So I'm much more. I'm not. I wouldn't have to be as professional as you because I would like to be a psychologist. So I don't have a corporate huge, senior team that I have to report to an
Wow,
extent.
though, but what a heavy job emotionally, right? You're going to have
Absolutely.
people telling you they want to kill themselves and people telling you, you're going to help them discover or talk about how they were abused is like it's a different type of professionality, for sure.
Yes.
I'm no expert in that field, but buckle up. It's just
Yeah.
um,
I th- I think one part that I think I can deal with it a lot better is because like I'm definitely very transparent and open about myself. I'm like brutally open about my own life, and I think like that's one reason. But I'm also not as professional, so like I'm very hypercritical of myself. So I always like even now like we started the supervised coaching like last week, which is like the last stage of training for a healthy gamer, and it's like even after the sessions, I still think like, oh, I could have said this better, I could have done that better, and I still have to like balance that within myself.
yep, yep,
And I also like I'm improving my own self being because, like I said to you before, I've had my own issues with like alcoholism,
yep.
which lowers your self worth. So it's making me get my own self worth and realize that like I do have the skill set and the ability to do it.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
It,
Alcoholism's it's a monster.
yeah,
So
like yeah, I'll save that question for a
yep,
little bit later. But yeah,
sure.
that's something like it's a bit hard to talk about. It's not easy. So one question is on the list. Best advice you could give to someone to become more professional, which could be like a bit generic.
Well, yeah, I think professional is two things. It's how you act yourself, like the work you do. Do you have work ethic? Do you have character? Do you have consistency? And that's really about living up to your character. Well, having pure aspirations and then trying to live up to them. And then there's the appearance of professionality, which has more to do with how you carry yourself, how you speak, how you dress. Uh, it's really funny because to work, I normally wear a Twitch hoodie and a t shirt.
Mhm.
So the shirt is actually symbolic for my stream, um, that I represent that to them of, hey, that you may need to do this because other people will first judge you by your appearance.
Yeah.
Because literally, quote unquote, the first thing they see. But to be more professional really has to do with your conduct. And I would say, they say trust can be defined as consistency over time. And so I think to be more professional, you have to avoid hypocrisy. And, if you say it, you can't do the whole do as I say, not as I do. So my short advice would be consistent. If you're not going to do something, don't claim you're going to do it.
Yeah.
Don't. And that would be my main advice to be more professional. It doesn't really, in the end, you can be considered a professional no matter how you dress or how you look or even how you speak if your behavior matches what you propose. And look, professional killers, that's a term, right? Um, they can be considered professional as long as they're very consistent and highly skilled at murdering people. It may not be
Yeah.
that respectable, but it's about being consistent, highly skilled. And if you say, no, no, he's dead, I'll take care of it, then there better be, a body in the desert 2 days later. Um, I'm just pointing out that it really is about consistent behavior. So,
Yeah. So that's because when you were like when I asked the question in my own head, I have an idea, and then because I would also say it's like you're better at defining things in a professional sense because you're more professional than me. But so the idea, like like if you're gonna do a task or commit to doing a task, you have to complete it and not get distracted, start another task, and just be consistent with doing what you say you'll do. So I like that
yeah.
because that's something I definitely have a little bit of an issue with at the moment. Because part of it is I'm putting my health first at the moment, so I'm being consistent in that sense.
Mm-hmm.
But then there's a lot of ideas that I have like in terms of content or things I want to do. Like I want to read a lot more as well, so I bought more books, but I haven't really started reading them. I have like your content. I could sit there and watch. I could binge watch a lot of your content as well.
Sweet. Please do.
Yeah. And just for the record, you don't mind if I watch it on stream because technically
No,
speaking, that's
No,
You
no.
know,
Please do. Please share it. If you want to comment over me and agree or disagree, I don't believe I have all the right answers. I encourage my chat to correct me, extend,
yeah,
argue with me, and feel free to do the same. In that I have one set of 25 years of experience, but my chat combined or your chat, they have thousands of years of experience. And so I can't know everything better. Um, yeah, please, that would be great.
yeah, like because I did stream the other day, like coming up with questions for you. So I
Yeah,
was like
yeah,
taking questions from the chat, or
yeah,
I
yeah.
was watching
That's
some of your content, and like that's like a little bit of an easy way to farm content as well. I'm just here doing what I would do in private, and I can stream it and
yep.
interact with people and watch your content. Is like because it's educational as well. It's like it feels beneficial to do that type of thing anyway because it offers a positive outcome to anyone who's watching. And
Fantastic. I'm happy. No, my goal, just to be transparent, my goal is to reach as many people as I can. In other words, I feel like I've learned a lot of things the hard way. I talked about honestly, I wasn't a very good manager in the beginning. I made myself redundant twice through my behavior.
mm-hmm.
Like the way I was leading led the company to say, well, we're downsizing. And, since we have to pick some people to get rid of, you could be one of them. Um, and I'd rather other people not have that experience. Like I want them to have great careers, and if they can learn from me rather than learning the hard way, I'd rather that happen. So I'm trying to reach as many people as I can, and that's why, yeah, I'm super happy to reach out to a new audience.
Yeah, absolutely. That's one reason I actually did message Healthy Gamer and said like, "Hey, can you host?" Because like I think this is somewhat valuable because it's like Twitch has a lot of people who are like the younger generation and like a lot of people on Twitch, not to like stereotype them, a lot of people use it as an escape mechanism or
Sure.
coping mechanism from real life. And especially coming from Healthy Gamer, like there's a lot of people there who just won't be as professional. So it's like it's cool to combine like both of the worlds because I think
Yeah.
you need duality.
Well, I'm glad you said that. Someday I'm going to reach out to Dr. K and his team and say, look, is there a future where it makes sense to hand people off from what you're doing to what I'm doing?
Yeah.
In other words, if people are not, and I hope most of you in chat, I'm sure a lot of you know who Dr. Kanagia and Healthy Gamer underscore GG are. But uh, basically, if you aren't healthy, if you can't face, if you're addicted to games and you're sinking your life into playing games and it's an escape mechanism for you, you're not ready for what I do.
No.
You've got to get to where you can invest in some other things and do some other work. But then once you get healthier, you need a source of self-esteem, and career success can be one of those sources of self-esteem. And people need money and they need a life.
Exactly.
And so someday I will talk to Dr. K about, does it make sense to pipeline people, from him to me and to people like me, so that they can go from, okay, I'm kind of getting my life together. I'm stepping back from just gaming 40, 60, 80, 100 hours a week and being in this unreal world. Am I ready to do, am I now ready to get a resume, to learn how to interview, to talk about how to work in a corporate workplace, to talk about how to tackle education, all the things I cover. So, I haven't asked Dr. K that yet because he's so busy getting what he's
Yeah.
got going, up and running. But I think it's a good conversation that someday we'll have. So,
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I can imagine like you like have you Dr. K, Devin Nash in the conversation. You could even get like maybe like a fitness streamer as well, because I think
yes.
like something like discipline is also something that like you all kind of have your own thoughts on discipline, but that's something that you have to build up as well. And that's where I am right now. So like I'm like becoming more disciplined and I'm realizing like I'm not that financially secure. I'm okay, but I would like to be more financially secure doing a work that I love. and have a passion for, because then it's a lot easier to like enjoy that type of life and be like having a more balanced lifestyle.
Uh, yeah, and there's a discussion here in my chat about are games always an escape or addictive? No, right?
No.
There are people who watch movies, and then there are people who get sucked into the TV. There are people who play games and enjoy them, and then there are people who get can't do anything else. And so it's just, again, maybe I shouldn't have brought my martini on screen with someone who's struggled with alcoholism, but Pugh has struggled with alcoholism. I don't have that particular problem. Like, I have not suffered that personally. And so I can have a drink and it's fine. But for a lot of people, and I don't know if you take this approach, Pugh, a lot of people who've had alcoholism feel they can never drink again. Like, they have to be absolute about it or they'll get sucked back in. Whether or not that's where you are, it's about your relationship. Alcohol can be something you drink and enjoy, or it can be something horrible for you.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, absolutely. And it like that applies a lot in Twitch. It's like, it's okay to watch a streamer while you're doing work and have them on in the background, but then it can be life sucking if you're always interacting and typing in the chat, and like that's your main focus, because then that completely derives from anything else that you could be productive with, especially if you're donating like a lot of money as well, because then that's like could hurt your wallet as well. So yeah, it's like it is very unique with the balance. And if you like, you're curious about the answer to that, I think in time I would be able to drink again. I think a lot of it was a low self-esteem and low self-worth, and I also got technically like gaslit in an abusive relationship. So, but I know that wound was like reopened from, say, trauma when I was younger, because both my parents were drunks, so I was raised in the sense to like deal with my problems with alcohol, which isn't really
that's deal with.
Yeah.
It's interesting. 20 years from now, you may, or even sooner, you may have someone on stream saying, well, it's not surprising that I struggle with gaming. I was raised by my parents who had gaming issues.
Yeah.
So not yet, but it's coming.
Yeah, like they dealt with their problems by just gaming away and pretending that they didn't exist. It's definitely gonna happen.
Yeah, no, absolutely, right? Like, anyway. So what else?
Yeah.
What else would you like to talk about?
All right. So, let's see. Okay, what's the most important thing when it comes to being successful in a competitive workplace? And I've got some examples. Is it like networking and making friends? Because you talk about getting a mentor and stuff like that in some of your content. Is it like a big part would be learning to control your ego, but like you still need that? Or is it being just a straight up good leader or working harder than everyone else? So there's a bit of a loaded question.
Yeah. I wouldn't have picked. I didn't hear my option for that go by, so I would say D, none of the above.
Okay.
And what I would say is most important to be successful is find something you can excel at. And what I mean by that is find something that for you is. It's got to have value to some employer or to some customer, but find something that you can enjoy doing. People often say that you're passionate about, because you're either going to be getting energy from your work or you're going to be getting drained by your work. And if you're doing something you fundamentally don't like and aren't that good at, it's basically going to suck energy from you. And if you're doing something, maybe even something that probably pays less, hold that thought, it won't forever, that you're really passionate about and that you love, you will probably get better and do better and better work there and become recognized for it. And like in my hometown, there was a guy, he's long dead, but he started collecting people's local garbage. Like at the turn of in 1900, he had a wagon and he would go around and pick up people's garbage to feed to his pigs. And so he was like a really cheap pig farmer who didn't even want to buy feed. He would just feed them other people's garbage.
Okay.
But basically fast forward 100 years, he has like his kids run a garbage collection empire, where they run all the garbage collection for like a several state area, and
Hmm.
it's huge money. And they're actually in this farm country where I'm from, like one of the bigger employers and one of the richer companies. And so, here's a guy who like made a garbage empire, and his kids and his grandkids are super well off. And so my point is, find something that you're going to enjoy doing and you can put your heart into, and you'll kick ass.
Yeah.
So my answer to what's most important to be successful, and see, that's kind of what I did, is I was a good engineer, but I found like, oh, this like working with human puzzles and directing projects, it's fun. And so there's this saying, find a job that you love and you'll never work a day in your life. If you can find that thing that you're passionate about, the work doesn't take effort. It actually gives you energy.
Yeah.
And so I sometimes drive my wife and others nuts because I want to talk about work. And I want to talk about like, oh, this person is unhappy, or this project's off track, and what do you think I should do? And, and sometimes when I'm really excited about something, like 3 or 4 months ago, I published that I had gotten this patent on using drones to deliver packages from a truck that was driving through a people's neighborhood. So the idea
Okay.
was, rather than fly the drones from central warehouse, fly them from off this truck like an aircraft carrier. Well, I don't work in our drone group. But I was so like, this is so cool. I have this idea. And the point of this story is that wasn't work for me. To like come up with that and write it up and submit it was just fun. And I believe a little bit on faith, you can make a living doing anything. And if you don't believe me, consider the fact that if you rewound the clock 10 years, the idea that anyone would make their living playing games, whether as an esports pro or a streamer or a YouTuber, you'd have been laughed, like ridiculed as like, oh my God, you are so dumb.
Mm.
And we don't know what will be next. But the fact that, people like big streamers make multiple millions of dollars, even more,
Yeah.
is,
I could add to that because like
please.
I technically speaking, I was like really, really popular at a game called America's Army, which was like a first-person shooter. And
Yep.
if video games were as big as they are now, I would have been pro when I was like 14 in like 2004, because I was really good at this game. And back then, like your websites and forums weren't as
Mm-hmm.
common as they were now. But you'd have like your clan forum, and you'd hand out there, and you'd like crap talk other teams or whatever. And I was like a founder of a team, but you could never. Then people would be like, "Oh, you can't put gaming experience on a resume because you're just gonna sound like a dumbass." Um, I ended up working in PC world where like computer games were a bit more
Yep.
accepted. But it's like you wouldn't put like leadership of a clan in a like even though you won like online tournaments and stuff, you wouldn't put that in a resume because it's like, oh, that's a video game, it don't matter. But now, I've won a championship, and I've won like technically the players won the money, but I've won a championship, and I have that as a resume, and like it was with Gfinity, which is a big organization in the UK for tournaments.
Yeah.
But like they made content, so after we won, they asked us to go back towards the venue, and they took us out because I won a game in a championship in Rocket League. They took us out on a racetrack day in go-karts, but they had a film crew follow us and like interview us and stuff like that. And I can be like, hey, like I've got like that's an actual piece of content you could watch, and I'm proud of that. And I think that would allow me to believe that I'm a good leader, because
Yeah.
I also like my I never like that was my rookie season as a manager. I've never managed professionals, and I
Nice.
didn't play and I didn't even play Rocket League. But I also managed FIFA, where we got second place. I managed Street Fighter, I managed Rainbow Six, and I managed Battalion 1944. And I wasn't paid like that well at all. But it's like I made
No,
sure
but
that all, yeah,
you were earning a living doing something you love, though,
yeah,
right?
absolutely, yeah. And it wasn't really part of my job title to say like care about the mental health of the players. But for the amount of money I was paid, I put in like probably like double or triple the amount of hours that I needed to, because I would talk to them about everything that they needed to, like mental health. Some of them, one of them was like an ex-convict who had been to jail for like violent assault. So he was older than me as well. So he was very like hard to calm down, because he would just say whatever he wanted, and he would cause conflict or confrontations between the group. Um, and I had to talk to him about like their partners and stuff like that, because they weren't in like a healthy relationship. And one player, I had to Casio, you wouldn't mind me saying his name now. He's on Veloce, which is like right now the top 3, I think, in RLCS, which is like the world, and he got top 6 in the last championship. But I had to like have a conversation with his parents with a voice call or video call, and convince them, because he was 17, that I would be like his guardian. So I had to like travel even further to pick him up from the airport, and they'd never left France, and they were from a small town in France, and they'd never flown before, or his parents. And he ended up getting the MVP of the season, like in his first time, and like I took a lot of pride in that. And I didn't have to, but like that isn't something I considered work, and like we would do 2v2 sometimes in Rocket League, and I sucked, but he would fly around and like dunk on all these nerds. And that was fun.
Yeah, being carried can be a lot of fun when you suck at games. It is nice when you're not good, like to have that person who's just like, yeah, I got this. Look, yeah, on that point, that's a great story. And that's what I would encourage people, some people in my chat said, well, what if you don't even know what you want to do? You do have to explore and find that.
Yes.
And it's okay. Like, you're probably young. It's okay to like spend a little time finding it. And look, I backed into it. I said, if you've been here the whole stream or reprising it, I was trained as an engineer, and I actually thought management was the dark side. Like, I thought, oh, managers, pointy-haired boss from Dilbert, they're some sort of idiots. Why would anyone want to do that? And then I got kind of asked to do it, and I'm like, oh, this is way cooler. So I didn't know. I found it out. I found it out.
It is, yeah. I think that's something like Dr. K would be good to have to talk about that stuff, because it's like those types of, you're not going to know unless you have experiences. And if you're like too afraid to go out, try the experiences because you're an awkward, or you're introverted, or you're afraid of strangers and they make you anxious, then you're not going to know where these things are. And it's like you have to push yourself to the limit sometimes. There is also like the sense of calling, I think. Like I was always big into psychology, but I always had a hard time in education.
Right.
So I think like you kind of know. And then I think once you end up in that type of job where it's part of your calling, you're like, you can trace back your roots through like life and how you ended up there, and how it always called to you in a sense.
I think in hindsight, it's super easy. But what you don't know in that is how much is confirmation bias.
Yes.
In other words, I don't know. Like maybe I play ice hockey. When we finish up here, I'm actually going to go to an ice hockey game to play. Maybe I'd have been a great hockey player. Probably not. But, maybe one of the challenges is once you commit to a career and do it, you don't know what else you might have also really enjoyed.
Yeah.
I love the outdoors. Maybe I should have been like a hiking guide or whatever, a park ranger. I think I would have starved to death, and so that might not have been as good. They don't make very much money. But the point is, I actually do want to make this point for the people in both chats that are maybe thinking about it. There is not one perfect job for you. There's a lot that are good.
Yes.
It's not a matter of finding the one thing. I heard this pointed out basically by a minister who said it's not like God sets up this trap where there's only one thing you can do that fits who you are. It would be interesting to ask Dr. K this, because he talks about your dharma.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think your dharma is only one thing. That may not be perfectly Buddhist, but I think you can find a path that fits your dharma, and there are multiple paths as long as you're consistent with who you are. So anyway, uh, so, and no, to my chat who said, I don't have any regrets about where I am, in the sense that now I get to help so many people. It's a huge
Yeah.
payoff. So, my life's fantastic. So the only thing I'm hoping is that coronavirus doesn't snuff me out before I can do more of it. But that's,
Yeah.
that's an aside.
No, I really agree with what you said there though, because it's like I think like part of it is you have to care and you have to have the self-worth, and if you're consistent or more professional and you work towards something, you can achieve loads of different things. And this is gonna like this will relate into one of the questions I have, which is like I always think that if you do something for long enough, then you start to see the world in that way. So yeah, I was going to say, do you see the world in too much of a professional way because you always talk about coaching or helping people in a work way? Whereas if you had like a musician, like they everything that they hear is a way that they could incorporate a sound into a song, or they hear the world in a musical way. Or like I'm a philosopher, so I see the world in like storytelling or a way to like
Mm-hmm.
metaphorize like life, so like other people can learn from my existence to an extent. But the same could be said of like painting and so on, because I think I would have been like I've always been had a good tune for music. So I think like if I was locked in a studio or a musicians all day and night and listen to them create music in the way that they see the world, I would start to see the world in a more musical way. And I think that's a trait of like conditioning as well. But I was like, the question was, do you see the world in too much of a professional way, or do you think you have the balance?
Well, I guess I should reflect. A lot of people around me have said, gee, Ethan, you can't turn it off. And so
Yeah.
I have to think that maybe I have a problem there. People who care about me, people who know me, some of them have said, like, Ethan, you don't seem to have an off switch on the managerial executive thing.
Mm-hmm.
And so, I do think I see you. You do sort of become what you do. I mean, I spend more hours at work than anywhere else. The only place that comes close is how long I spend asleep, and that isn't super helpful.
Mm.
So, uh, yeah, I think I've had to learn, and I don't know how much she would agree. Hopefully, she'd be generous, as she always is. I'm sure my wife feels sometimes I try to manage her. Um, if she's listening, I don't, sorry about that. It's not my intent. Um, but it can bleed over. My kids, um, yeah, my friends. Like, I'm the organizer. I'm the one who's like, let's get together on this date. Let's take a vacation here. And I can't be who I'm not. Like, to thine own self be true, right? And
Yeah.
so now the interesting thing is, I was that way. I was that way all the way back in college. Like, I was the one who organized the project team in my college courses. I was the one who organized the club and was an officer in the club. So I'm just kind of that person and always have been. I think my career is more of an expression of who I am than my behavior being an expression of my career. But they're also intertangled. It's hard to know the difference.
Yeah. I mean, like being good at organizing stuff, I think is something like everyone should try to have anyways. Because I was always that person. It's like I'm always showing up on time, and I get really annoyed. Like even when I was like 15, 16 years old, and you'd meet your friends down in town and go skateboard and stuff like that, I was always on time, and people would show up late, and it's like those
What the
people
hell's
really
your
annoy me.
problem? What the hell's your
Yeah,
problem? Do you have no respect?
yeah. And yeah, it's like, can you tell time? And it's like, then you would know then people are always going to be late. So you try to like tell them to show up earlier. And it's like, I don't know if you ever did that, but you was like, if someone's always going to be half hour late, you tell them a different time. So they show up early.
Uh, Very occasionally. Yeah. Or now I'm a little bit better at like recognizing like that's just who they are, and I need to be patient. Uh, you know, um, So I think I drive our mutual friend Devin crazy because he's a little bit more laissez-faire than I am about timing. Whereas I'm like, let's
Yeah.
do it. If I, like with you, I came on your stream like spot on for the time we set. That's just kind of how I'm wired. So
Yeah. And yeah, like overall, still say like that's a good quality to have. But yeah, like you have to incorporate that. Some people just don't work that way. Uh, but that kind of leads into the next question. So I was going to say like, why did you decide to create the Easy Coach? But I was going to say like, has creating the Easy Coach helped you realize that about people? Has it helped you like maybe become less professional and see things for more like a psychological way that people are like so much different?
I've learned a ton from doing it. So I'll come back to that in a second. I created it because I told you earlier I thought I wanted to be a professor. So I've always been a teacher type. And I stepped away from that because it wasn't the right career direction.
Mm-hmm.
But I was always a mentor at work. And one day I was complaining to my assistant, like, oh, I'm so busy. I don't have time for anything. And she's like, well, Ethan, you have 10 hours of mentorship appointments a week. Like, maybe that's a little out of balance. And so I was realizing I love to teach, but like I couldn't teach more people one on one. And so the Easy Coach was my way to teach at scale. It's not as effective. I can do more for one person in an hour than I can do for all the viewers on this stream in a single hour.
Yeah.
But I do a lot for the people on the stream, and there's a lot of them. So if you multiply it, it's way more effective. Because normally how I run my stream is I let people, I have an extension and people put in questions and can vote them up, and I take them in priority order. So it's pretty efficient. And I'm able, and I have a good community that chimes in. And so like we teach together really well. But I created what I originally called the Easy Coach. I dropped that branding because it was too obscure. Like people weren't. It's because my middle initial is Z, and so like Easy Coach was supposed to be like the word easy, and But see, I have to explain it, and so it's not
Yeah.
it's not good. Um. So I created it to share, and then the other thing was like, so now what has it taught me? It taught me a ton about Twitch, so about my own product. But also, I learn a ton from the people I coach. And it's
Mm-hmm.
also made me a lot better at coaching. Before I started, my strongest coaching was for like junior executives, people who are trying to be what I am today, because I'm so far away from the college experience. But so
Yes.
many of my viewers are in college or only a few years out of college, and they're asking me questions about like, how do I get an internship? How do I get my first job? How do I start a network? And so it's made me a lot better coaching people that are earlier in their career. Because within Amazon, my specialty is coaching people how to be executives. And so it's just very different than what I do here, which I love. Um, and frankly, thank God, a lot of the early career questions are a lot simpler.
Yes.
They're asking me, what do you think about a master's degree, which is a lot easier question than like, some complex, obscure question about how to launch a product into multiple international markets or anyway.
Yeah.
So I hope
There's a
I
lot of
answered your
extra info.
question, but it's been great. And I started it to share to a bigger audience, like I said earlier.
Yeah. I'm guessing also like it gives you a bigger purpose or meaning as well because it's like a lot of people who are taking it on board. They're not like, oh, Ethan, you're full of crap. You have no idea what you're on about. A lot of people like myself, and you there's Devin Nash who are like, and you have enough content where it's like you could probably get partnered now as well because you're like, and then that's the self achievement that you've done more
Mm-hmm.
and
Yeah.
it seems like we're somewhat similar in certain aspects, but it feels good to know that you actually make a difference, right? You're not making people's lives worse, which I don't know what you feel in your in the work life. It doesn't feel like that, but it's like you get paid to do that, and then you do this out of pleasure, and it's like that pleasure pays off in experience.
Yeah, that was uh, that is the big payoff. That was the big payoff for me, was meaning. I spent a lot of time trying to figure out what did I. So I know you have a question later about the fact I wear a cross. It's under my shirt right now. And am I a Christian? The Bible says, "To whom much has been given, from him much will be required," and I take that very seriously. And whether you're Christian or not, I just believe if you've been lucky in life, if you've been blessed in life, pay that forward.
Yeah.
This is my best way to pay it forward. Some people are gifted with the ability to work with the homeless or work with the mentally ill or the elderly. I'm not. Like, that isn't my gift. And so I had to come to peace with because those are like the traditional charity things. Like, oh, what are you doing for, to save the whales or some tearjerker cause? And I realized, it's not at all a tearjerker. Like, well, what I do is I help people advance their career and make more money. It doesn't sound like, it doesn't stack up charitably.
Yeah.
But I realized people need that too. And so my way of giving back was saying what I am gifted at is helping people with their educations and careers. And I've actually, over the course of my life, and even here, I know I've helped a lot of people actually get better jobs and happier. And so that's my way to give back. And the reason I will do this stream or something like it, for years and years, quote unquote, the rest of my life, is this is my calling, right? It's my gift to share, and I'm in a position where I can share it. So why the hell wouldn't I? I guess I could just, I usually, the phrase is Netflix and chill, but I help build Prime Video. So I have to say Prime Video and chill.
Oh, okay.
But
yeah,
I could do that, right? But that's empty. You can only watch so many old movies and then you're done. So anyway.
Yeah. It's like you've put in the hard work and you've paid your dues. So now it's like you've got that freedom to, we spoke about this earlier, just cut down the hours and live a life of more meaning and purpose. And
yeah, I made that choice, less money, less, and more meaning and purpose. And I'm very pleased with it. And it's so great to be able to help folks. Totally worth it in my case. And I hope all of you find something that's got a lot of meaning. Because that's what was missing in some. You ask what I sacrificed in my executive career earlier. I think I sacrificed meaning in some cases. I ended up working on things that were good for my career but didn't mean a lot, and so I had to find a different way to get meaning. All right. What else would you like to cover? Because I'll have to go in about 15. So if you want to get into some of those heavy topics like alcoholism and spirituality, I don't know if you want to go there.
We can.
It's up to you. It's your interview, man.
Yeah. Well, we've covered the good things about your career. And then the way that you see the world, I think that's a nice question. But from someone else or someone you've heard, what's your favorite quote or saying or phrase? Because I think I like philosophy, so I think quotes are a really good way to put an idea out there.
So probably the single most powerful quote in the workplace I give is results are the currency of credibility. And that one's from me, so I'm not intent on quoting myself. I will quote others. But I think from career advice, the point is, in the end, what you get done is how good you are. And everything else, you can claim how good you are and whatever. My actual favorite quote, I'm going to look it up here because it's a little bit long. So give me just 1 second because I'm going to have to read it.
Okay.
1 sec. I think this is probably my favorite quote. It's from the early 20th century. It's from the early 20th century American president Teddy Roosevelt.
Okay.
And I got to get this to pull up here. So the quote is called "The Man in the Arena." And the entire quote says, it's not the critic who counts, not the man who points out how the strong man stumbles, nor where the doer of deeds could have done them better. The credit belongs to the man who is actually in the arena, whose face is marred by dust and sweat and blood, who strives valiantly, who errs, who comes up short again and again, who spends himself in a worthy cause, who at the best knows in the end the triumph of high achievement, and who at worst, if he fails, at least fails while daring greatly, so that his place shall never be with those cold and timid souls who neither know victory nor defeat. And I have that up outside my office. Yeah. So to me, that's super inspirational to remember that it's not like you have to ignore the critics, and we should value the people who try.
Yeah.
And so that for me is and I don't live up to it, and probably Teddy Roosevelt didn't either, but at
No.
least he could articulate it. So that would be my single favorite quote.
That's a good quote. I think that's the type of quote where if that's the like one that you liked, you could never feel like you live up to it, because it's like you could never be perfect to an extent, right?
Yeah, and it's a call to perfection for sure.
Yeah, but it's like, that's where you can remove your ego and be like, no one can be perfect, but because you can't be perfect doesn't mean you can't be better or keep trying.
Keep trying. And again, it says in a way it doesn't call to perfection, because it says even if they fail, at least they fail having tried. And so I feel like I'd rather fail having tried than not try. And that's really hard for everybody in both chats. That's that point about how do you have discipline? You've got to be willing to sometimes take egg in the face, because otherwise you will be afraid to try. Sweet. What else?
No, I like that one. That's kind of similar to, like, I have a couple of smaller quotes,
Yeah.
which would be like, be who you needed when you were younger. Like that's like a nice little small one.
That's great.
Mainly because like I didn't like I had a very rough upbringing, you could say. But have you heard the quote? It's by Marianne Williamson, which I think she does something with the politics now. And she has the "Our Deepest Fear" quote, which is in like the film Coach Carter, but shortened down. Have you heard that one?
I don't know. What's the whole
No?
quote?
All right, so our deepest fear is not that we are inadequate. Our deepest fear is that we are powerful beyond measure. It is our light, not our darkness, that most frightens us. We ask ourselves, who am I to be brilliant, gorgeous, talented, fabulous? Actually, who are you not to be? You are the child of God. Your playing small does not serve the world. There's nothing enlightened about shrinking down so other people won't feel insecure around you. We're all meant to shine as children do. We are born to make manifest the glory of God that is within us, not just in some of us, but in everyone. And as we let our own light shine, we unconsciously give other people the permission to do the same. As we are liberated from our fear, our presence automatically liberates others. You heard that one?
I had not heard that. It's very powerful.
Yes.
And a lesson that's hard to convey with like without hours of talking is just how much fear holds us back.
Yes.
Much shorter would be Churchill. The only thing we have to fear is fear itself. Fear of being who we can and of what could go wrong. Like I am subject to lots of fears. I allow myself to be, by the way. Mark Twain said, in my life, I've suffered a great many things. Fortunately, few of them actually happened, because he's just making them up in his mind.
Yeah.
And we do that so well. Learning to overcome that and say, learning to fight those fears and try it. I'm with your quote there. That's a great quote.
Yeah. There's a similar one from Dune, which is like, in short, it's like fear is the mind killer.
Yes.
I don't know if you like that one's quite.
It is same thing. And if you've experienced being really terrified,
Hmm.
it's paralyzing. Like if something happens where you're truly uh, terrified, you now have an understanding. Like most of the things that people fear, they're very minor. We're so good at making, anyway, what's the worst that could
Yeah.
happen is a great question a lot of times. It's usually not very bad. So,
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Like some people, like they have a fear of standing up for themselves, and it like their lives only get worse. Is like you have to face that fear, like which is similar to the quote I said earlier. Like what you need most in life will be where you least want to look for it, but you're never gonna want to look for it because fear is there. And I think that's a really important thing to note um, about life as a whole. And I don't think we have time to go into like the alcohol issues
okay,
because
that's
that's
cool.
like
Maybe
that's
another
quite
time. That's a
yeah
long
that's
talk. Yes.
yeah, essentially, especially because I have like a lot of my own opinions, as you can imagine. Um, let's see. So I was gonna say, like, what's the another question is like, what's the wisest thing you've learned in life? But you could maybe ask like, do you believe in luck, or are you strictly with the idea that like luck is opportunity? Everyone says luck is opportunity meeting preparation. So
Uh, I believe I'm lucky. In fact, I believe it so much that, somewhat as a joke, but not completely, the hockey jerseys I wear for American ice hockey or for ice hockey uh, uh, say my name on the back says lucky because I'm not that good.
okay,
So I certainly believe in opportunity meeting preparation, but sometimes you're just like an example I share. I was at a startup that was not doing well, and this e-commerce company, called me up and said, "Hey, you're living in Boston, but do you want to move to Seattle?" And so I joined Amazon back when Amazon was a bookstore. Amazon Web Services hadn't been launched. Things like Alexa weren't even thought of.
no,
None of the digital services. There was no Prime Video. There was no Prime Music. There was no Kindle. And I was afraid, like, oh, I'm joining the IT department of a bookstore. Like, I'm gonna be some sort of like supporting accounting systems or something.
hmm
And when I got there, they said, "So we have this new project to build a video system. Would you like to work on it?" And so I ended up getting the chance to build what is now Prime Video, which has tens of millions of monthly viewers today. I, I have to think like that. Yeah, I could pat myself on the back and say that was opportunity met preparation, but some of that was just dumb luck, right?
yeah,
It was just friggin' dumb luck to get the chance to that just kept going. Then like, okay, so again, opportunity met preparation. I worked hard and I got to know some people, but then Amazon was buying its first game studio, and I happened to be chosen to be on the due diligence, like the group of people who evaluates are they worth buying. And then I asked the manager. I said, "Hey, would it be okay if I ran this? Like, we need somebody to run it." And I wasn't qualified to run a game studio. The last game I built was a 2D side scroller on an Apple II in monochrome.
hmm
So I wasn't, but they let me run the game studio, so I got to learn like how to make games. Now I'm not a game designer, but I've worked with game designers and managed game designers and artists, and I've learned a ton about it. Blah blah blah. There's a lot of luck.
yeah.
I believe in luck.
I mean, but at the same point, like it's happened. You said it's happened to you so many times. Like, what do you say? Like, I know you were on Dr. K or Healthy Gamer stream, and you talked about imposter syndrome. Would that be a part of you being like hypocritical of yourself? Because I think that's something I've noticed about myself, right? So I can give an example.
Yeah.
I actually hold the record, technically speaking, for the longest professional game of StarCraft 2 commentated, which is like 3 hours long. And then Blizzard changed the game, so it's not going to happen
Yeah, it
again.
can't happen again for sure.
No, it's much shorter now, and like they changed Swarm hosts, so it was Swarm hosts v Mech, and it's like whatever.
Yeah.
But the only reason I ended up commentating was I was at an esports event, and I networked with someone who was creating like a media organization, Mini News. And I asked if I could join that doing StarCraft, and they're like, yeah. And they were sponsored by Antec when Antec were doing a lot of things. And Antec were hosting like a tournament series every week for like 250 euros or something like that. And I said, hey, like, no one's commentating on this. Can I do that? Like, I never commented. Well, I slightly had done it with friends for kicks, right? And they were like, okay, well, I have to ask Antec, and they had to go ahead to let me do it. And that was 2012, and like if it weren't for that, I wouldn't be here now either, because like that's led down like a long road of different things. But like sometimes I feel like I would call myself lucky because I'm one of those people who used video games as an escape mechanism and ended up as a professional. Like there's not that many professionals, especially who have done it for that long, and people be like, oh, you're lucky that you did this, or you're lucky you won a championship. And like sometimes I feel like I'm being tough on myself by saying I'm lucky, but then sometimes I feel like if it's happened consistently enough, then there must be some sort of skill or something that I do that allowed me to be successful in those senses. So I've always wondered if that's luck or if that's just me like being hyper self-critical of myself,
Yeah, I mean it's very hard to sort out, right? If you believe in some sort of afterlife, you'll know later, was it all planned out, or how much of it was you? I mean, look, let's go this way, right? You and I were both born white, male, and English speaking.
Mm-hmm.
The advantage we have over people who were born with none of those things, you can't say we earned any of that. Like, we could have been born in a very poor country in a very subservient role and have a lot less opportunity. And so I do think luck, there's what you're given and there's what you do with it, and they both count. Because there are also plenty of people who were born white, male, and English speaking who have thrown that away and they're not doing anything useful. Yes. And so they were just as lucky as we were in that sense, but for whatever reason they haven't done anything with it. So it's both. I can't give you a ratio, but like things like that are what convince me that there's luck involved.
Yeah, I understandable, because there's still aspects that come into it. Because like, yeah, you never know where you're going to be. But do you have to head off in a minute now? Is it?
I do. Is there any last question you really want to hit up from your list? Because I've really enjoyed this. This has been fun. I'd be happy to hook up with you again. You can build out your list, some other time that interests you. Because this has been great. And it looks like from my community's participation, they're finding it interesting to hear about some of what I've done. And, and I'm happy. I want people to know who I am and my experiences, so they know whether or not they should trust me.
Yeah. I wouldn't say I have any massive ones. Maybe like, have you ever experienced like divine intervention or like a more in-depth synchronicity?
Yeah, I was thinking about talking about that in terms of luck.
Okay.
I'll point to two places. I climb mountains, and the type of mountains I climb are glaciated. So you may or may not know about glaciers, but they have these big cracks in them called crevasses that are like these very wide, very deep ice moats. And they're often 10 or 20 feet wide and 100 or more feet deep.
Yeah, and you can't get out of them if you fall in one, can you?
Correct. No, you have to be pulled out. And usually the fall will kill you anyway.
Because they're sharp, yeah.
Yeah, they're sharp. And they also, this is like really horrible, they're V-shaped. Mm-hmm. And so there have been cases of people fall into them. And because of their momentum, they end up wedged into them and they suffocate because they're so tightly squeezed because their body weight drove them so deep in, they can't breathe. So there's like really horrible ways to die in them. Well, many years ago, I went climbing with a friend, and I'll shorten the story, but the two of us were roped together, and I slipped and fell into a crevasse, and it was 100 and some feet deep. And I should also say my friend, normally if you're climbing really safely, you have a couple other people on the rope. He was alone, so he would have had to hold my fall alone. And we were far away from any other climbers. So even if he held my fall, like, the reason you normally have two other people is you need two people to get one guy out. Like, one guy can't deadlift another.
Yes.
So we were kind of taking a foolish risk, which I've also been known to do. But the point is, I shot into this crevasse on my back. I fell onto my back and I picked up speed and I shot right into this thing. And, I yelled falling, which is what you're supposed to do. And my friend, like, took his ice axe and laid down, and he didn't see what happened because he buried his axe. Well, I shot into this crevasse. Well, on the far side of the crevasse, only about 6 feet wide, where I happened to go in, because this was very long, like 100 feet long or more, there was a shelf, like a cupped, I'm trying to get it on camera. There was like a cupped shelf. And so I came shooting in from this side. There's a 100-foot deep hole here. And I shot over, my feet landed on the shelf, and I stepped out the far side. Like nothing happened. Like I hit, landed, stepped out. My friend turns around. I'm standing on the far side of the pit of doom, looking at him. And he's like, what the hell happened? So, sure, I think I'm lucky. And that's divine intervention, right?
Yeah.
It's like, if you believe in the divine. There's another case in my life. It would take us into the Christian discussion. Where it's the one time in my life I really feel that, well, I'll say this much. My friend who was an alcoholic and who later passed away, I met him one night. I had not met him. I was flying into town. I ended up in the hotel bar, not to drink, but to get food because it was the only thing left open.
Mm-hmm.
And I ended up sitting next to a random guy. I didn't want to talk to him. I just wanted to eat and go to bed. Well, this story is worth telling. It's the night before I interviewed for my job at Amazon. So I had flown into Seattle. I didn't live here. It's late. I need to eat dinner. I end up sitting next to this random guy. I'm trying to eat my dinner, go to bed so I can interview for Amazon. What actually happened is he starts talking to me and I start talking to him, and he's very unhappy. He's an alcoholic, as I've shared. He's crying. He's very upset. He's in this bar crying and asking me, all these questions about God. And I had this very strong feeling that what God needs me to do is stay on this stool right now and talk to this guy. So long story short, I end up talking to him until like 2 or 3 a.m. when the bar closes. And I make this really strong connection with him. But I'm supposed to interview at Amazon at 8 a.m. the next morning. And I go back to my hotel room, and I get in my hotel room at like 3 a.m. And I'm like, I am so screwed. Like, I'm going to have to get up in 4 hours and go interview at Amazon. I'm so screwed. So I order room service because I'm like, well, I'll get 30 minutes extra sleep and I'll get room service in the morning. And I can at least like eat, stuff a little food in my face as I get ready.
Yeah.
But I remember I very clearly, I said, God, you wanted me on this stool. Tomorrow's interview with Amazon is on you. Like, if I'm supposed to get the job, you're going to have to carry it because I'm finished. And if you don't want me to have it, that's fine. Like, I didn't know, that's fine.
Yeah.
But I turned it over and I'm like, hey, your problem, buddy. And then I went to sleep. I got up. I had my pot of coffee. I went to interview and I fucking killed it. I aced that interview up, down, sideways, destroyed the interview. And it turns out every interviewer was wanted me to come on board, and I was a zombie through it. But between not giving a damn, like I wasn't uptight about it. So I was just like, sure, I'll answer you. Oh yeah, and like I had no stress at all because I'm like, this is so blown,
Yeah, I get you.
But I just nailed it. So to me, that's like between feeling that God wanted me on that stool and then the fact that I just killed the interview the next day, I feel like, okay, if there is a God and divine intervention, that's it for me, for my experience.
Yeah, I definitely like I won't go that into it because it's running over now, but I could probably I felt like that type of thing as well. Because it's like you did what you felt was more important because you don't know if that gentleman went off and like that helped him recover from his problems, if he got to make a difference in the world. And it's like you did your thing and like you didn't have the nerves because like that's like one of the benefits of having a belief in some sort of divineness, right? It's like you did your thing. It's like you're gonna have your
Yeah.
back covered.
Well, you did what you could. Like you did your
Mm,
part, right?
yeah, that's no, I've definitely been there, but yeah, that's like without going with like I could talk about like religion and spirituality and belief of divine for hours, right? So like I'll definitely leave it there
Yeah, maybe
because
we'll
you
do it. Maybe we'll do it some other time.
yeah, because I think it's a really unique way because there's so many different gods and stuff like that. I
Yeah.
think it's just important to believe in something, um, and that gives you
Well,
like a
I can
belief.
wax philosophical. That will be a very different stream. I've never talked about religion. I've never actually brought up
Okay,
Christianity on my stream before. Because I don't push my beliefs on others. So that's probably as
no,
much as I've ever said about it. But I'm happy. I'm not shy about it. So that happens to be my beliefs. I hope other people have their own beliefs. But anyway, it's been. I will go now because I have to
yeah,
eat some dinner, speed style, like that interview, and head to hockey.
yeah,
But Huey,
and
it's
kick some
been
ass.
really neat to talk to you, and I'd
Yeah,
love
you too.
sometime to hear more about your experiences as an esports pro, because it sounds like
Absolutely.
you did some really cool stuff. So,
Yes, I like to think so. But yeah, I'm gonna stream for me like I streamed a little bit later in the day, so I'm gonna stream for a couple more hours, maybe maybe play a game and chill out. I
nice.
do interview people in general as well on my stream, so yeah,
All
like
right.
that's what I'm trying to do.
Well, cool. I'll talk to my community here. I'll go ahead and kill the Zoom call with you, talk to them for a minute, and then I'm going to head out. But thank you so much. And you have a great middle of the night now for you.
Yes,
All right.
absolutely.
Cheers.
All right, have a lovely night. Bye bye.
And otherwise, thank you all so much for being here. That was fun. That was a great, relaxing stream for me because I didn't have to plan it. So, with that, I'm out. See you later.